Thank you very much. It's good to be back. And another excellent group, both multidisciplinary, multiple layers, I think, here in terms of our ability or your ability as experts to see this question. And we've been afforded, I think, quite an exciting opportunity with this one to think a bit further into the future, to think about leadership, vision, but also about strategy as it applies to, allocating scarce capital towards what your organization hopes to do with AI. And I think also just listening to Prem there raised the question, I think the way he put it, who knows how the world's going to change? The four of you, I don't think are claiming to know how the world is going to change, but it can be useful and exciting sometimes to talk about how it might change. So let's do that. I'd love to start potentially with you, Sathish, on the question of leadership, the mentality that goes into leadership on AI, and how perhaps you might have felt that mentality's changed at all in recent months, if it has for you and for Ally.
Look, excited to be here. Let me draw the extreme case first. For those of you who now go to an LLM to search, please raise your hand. Almost the entire room. Mm-hmm. Today, customers are seeking, not searching. They want answers. They're not going to Google, getting a bunch of answers and figuring out what needs to be done. They are saying, I need to know what has to happen. Customer mindset is shifting. The technology has evolved to a point where, and this is a bad analogy right before lunch, a pizza and 3 beers on a Friday evening with 3 dudes or dudettes can stand there and say, let me look at all the companies globally. What money are they making? Let me look at their financial metrics, whatever it is, right? What is their NIM? What is their return on investment? How much are their expenses? And literally, before Monday shows up, can create something that rivals what that company does that they are targeting. So customer mindset is changing. Technology is evolving fast. And for Ally Financial, we started in 2008 not because customers wanted another bank, because they wanted a better bank. So we have always been in the cutting edge of creating path for others to follow. So our mindset has not necessarily shifted, but accelerated. We understand mindset is changing. We understand technology is there to serve the customers at the speed of culture and the speed of customers. So that's where we are going.
It's an interesting distinction, better, not necessarily different. Some of the things that are pre-existing can be enhanced and emphasized, and I'm sure we'll get to that topic, to enhancement when it comes to people, to talent, because a huge subject at the moment, and we've heard this very deliberately in the conversations before. So how is this going to affect the people in your organizations? But maybe before that, I wanted to ask you, Jodie, a similar question. How is the mentality, how is leadership around AI and transformation, how is that playing out at Manulife?
Well, it's playing out on multiple levels, right? The first is, of course, asking ourselves, what does the leader of the future look like? And we actually just launched a VP training program called Catalyst, and it's all about leading in the AI world. And it's not for tech people or AI people. It is for every VP in the entire company. And that's the way we think about it. And we try and break down, well, what is changing about leadership? And fundamentally, and we've heard this a few times today, I think what is changing about leadership is it's less about having the answers, and it's more about asking much better questions. We talk about, known unknowns and unknown knowns. It's really about finding the unknown unknowns. And that's not necessarily the thing that, for those of us that have been in leadership a long time, or even a short time, have had to focus on. Most current leaders today got there because they had knowledge and they were able to bring specific expertise to the table, not because they were the best at asking the hard questions or the best at exercising judgment or the best at contextualizing. And so these are new skills that leaders really need to have. Obviously, we need to support them with the right set of tooling. But at the end of the day, I think it's how we as individuals transform ourselves in this environment, in this economy, that's going to kind of make or break success.
Yeah. I think we've certainly heard it said quite convincingly that into the future, in a world where there's actually an abundance of answers, answering is relatively cheap and easy, good questions become a real commodity. And maybe we'll circle back to that idea of talent. What does a talent pipeline look like for a financial services firm that is trying to get people to ask the right questions? But before we do that, maybe, Samir, I could turn to you. You raised an interesting point with me earlier, I suppose, about the sophistication of the underlying ecosystem of vendors, foundational model companies, the building that's going on there. When you think about the future of financial services, what do you think about in terms of that sophistication improving, and what do you think that will do to many of the firms that are represented here today?
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest trends today in terms of how much the underlying vendor ecosystem has been changing and evolving. There's a lot of spotlight on the hyperscalers and also the foundational AI tool providers, right, who are building the most commonly used LLMs. But there is another story which is playing out in parallel, which is the ecosystem of vendors that serves the banks today and has served them over the last 5 to 50 years. And they're all building AI capabilities into their own core platforms, their own core workflows, their CRM tools. And they're saying, bring the use case to us because we are better at connecting to all the data and being able to natively host the AI applications that you may want to build on your existing systems, right? So I think there's a little bit of a three-way competition, if you will, between the vendors, between the foundational and the large-scale AI providers and these incumbent vendors, and then also the startups. All of them are kind of vying for the same set of use cases. I think for financial institutions, it's a great opportunity if they can figure out how best to optimize the sort of the workload between these three, and not workload in terms of computation, but in terms of where best to put the use cases. And certainly would see a faster acceleration or a faster go-to-market in terms of use cases, because some of these will be more plug and play, right, in terms of use cases. They will also be a lower cost, but also in terms of just the functionality of some of the use cases that will become more able and more powerful. And I'll give you one example really quick, which is for most of the time, chatbots, including in the financial services sector, have been sort of limited in their capacity, right? Because they're answering questions, but they may not do a lot of fulfillment because they're not tied into the fulfillment workflows. Mm. But if some of these vendors are successful, then those workflows will get much more enabled, and therefore the customer-facing or client-facing chatbots will be able to drive that fulfillment functionality because the vendors have brought native AI into their tools.
It's interesting listening to you speak about that race, the kind of three players dimensions to it, because something we were keen to get to in this conversation was not necessarily just kind of the nitty-gritty of use cases and prioritization, but a sense of what are the sort of non-negotiable ingredients now, as you see it, and it'd be plenty of people represented in this room who are really thinking about that. What does my organization need to have? So maybe we could start with you, David. What you're seeing at Morgan Stanley. What do you and your team see as the non-negotiables, the ingredients of transformation?
Absolutely, and I think first off, Luke, thanks for hosting this. And I want to drive off a lot of what Samir has talked about earlier. The world has evolved quite a bit. If you look at when most people started their AI journey, primary option was, let's take this API called GPT-4 and let's figure out how to integrate that across our ecosystem 3 years ago. And now we're at a point where we're spoiled for choice. We have buy options. We have plenty of still build options with a host of different AI capabilities. And we have very niche verticalized buy options as well. But what I feel has not changed for Morgan Stanley is some core principles around you have to understand your data. You have to have people that know what data is good, make sure the quality of the data is high, and make that data accessible and the tooling accessible. Particularly in the world of agentic infrastructures, this concept of model context protocols even promote even more the value of the data because it's creating more compatibility for agents to access. The second thing is always, we're a bank, security, guardrails, infrastructure, data privacy. These are all things that won't change. You have to have people that are very thoughtful around how do you make sure you've got the right security control plane. The third that I think a lot about is integration ecosystems, right? It's how do we not only go and bring AI into our data ecosystems or our CRM ecosystems, but think about how the fact that many of these workflows cross ecosystems, right? Many of these workflows involve people in the Microsoft suite, involve them in the Salesforce suite, involve them in the Snowflake suite. It's how do you kind of cross together these ecosystems to bring data so you can drive as much efficiency in the workflow. And the last thing that I've seen that doesn't change amongst many is people, right? You're still gonna have to have talent that know how to develop prompts, that know how to evaluate, because as many folks appreciate, what we found the most important thing is evaluation. Whether you buy or you build, you gotta know how to evaluate. And as part of this people aspect, once you figure out how to build or buy, once you figure out how to evaluate it, how do you drive change management? How do you find the people that often aren't on the AI team that sit in the business area and go and be the champion for that? And I'll give you an example of this that really resonates. Since we have now at this point spent most of the summer getting an AI tool to every employee at the firm, we're finding many times is people that are far away from the AI team, they're coming up with really interesting use cases just by giving them the tool. My favorite one is our members of our investing team in asset management follow the Lincoln model back in the day of Lincoln's team of rivals concept. So now as they churn through investment ideas, they've got one agent that plays the role of the bear case, one that plays the role of the bull case, one that plays the risk officer, and one that plays legal. And that they're churning all of these agents at different ideas, presenting that and then having a conversation. And that person couldn't sit further away from the AI team.
I mean, it's a brilliant way to get into that subject of the expectations that are being placed on people, firms, again, represented all in this room, and to hear Teresa talk this morning from the JP perspective about that idea of put it in the hands of your people and see what happens, because you might well be amazed. Jodie, is there something along those lines that you'd like to...
Yeah, I wanted to add a non-negotiable. I think that this has to be a strategic priority of the CEO and the C-suite. And I think it's not enough to be an enabler of the organizational strategy. It has to be a pillar of the organizational strategy. It is, there was a good comment earlier that the tech is easy, changing the business, changing the people is hard, and only if it's a priority of the C-suite do I believe that we can move forward. The other thing, and I just wanted to pick up on what both Samir and David said is, and you might get into this later, but the build versus buy thing is real, but there's a third one, which is build now and buy later. Because even buying 6 months of advantage or 9 months of advantage, I think is an important edge. And we are used to the word pivot being a negative thing. Okay, we're going to do something, and if it doesn't work, we're going to pivot. And I think we have to embrace the positive pivot that says we're going to do something, and it's going to work, and we're going to pivot anyways, because Workday comes out with something or ServiceNow comes out with something. I think we have to be super sharp in terms of where is the edge for our company. Is it in time to market? Is it in niche areas? Like, where's the alpha, to use the term from early this morning? And we got to think fast on that. And large financial services organizations are used to setting long-term strategies, picking a focus area, staying with that focus area. And I think this notion of positive pivot and quick pivots is something that we're going to have to get right as an industry.
Sathish, I'd love to know your thoughts on that, but build now, buy later. Are there other dynamics that you see?
See, the adaptability and resiliency is key for us. What you're finding is there is a race to zero for all these models. And you're constantly in the midst of new information being thrown at you. And the biggest need of the hour, starting from the CEO down, or even the board down, is not be tied to your preconceived notions. And if I have a team of 5,000, I get up and say, GPT 4.5 is the model of the future, we're going to use that. 2 weeks later, I find another model come in and do something that is game-changing. I should have the conviction in me and the courage in me to say, I now have new information. So I'm going to go tell you again that GPT 4.5 is not the model. We are going to shift. And if we are all tuned to saying, I have said something, I need to make sure that I'm true to my word. I'm true to my word. That is no longer true. So resiliency and adaptability and flexibility becomes key. And to do that, what we have done is built what we fondly call ally AI. So we are not anchored to one model. We are not going to one model to seek an answer and play around with it. We have the ability to shift our direction to multiple models that are available, and the new ones that are coming up, maybe pick the one that's best or go against all of those and combine the answers. So we are now customizing the answers for our customers as well as for our business. So adaptability is key. Context is even more important. And personalization is going to be the difference maker for us.
Yeah, I'd love to get into that topic, particularly with you, David, of agnosticism and flexibility as a real enabler. But just quickly on that point about conviction and CEOs, could you raise your hand in here if you feel like the CEO of your organization, if you happen to have one, is not taking this subject and the ones we've heard of today so far seriously enough? There's one. No, it's interesting. It's interesting. So there might be another layer to that, which is, how seriously and with what level of expectation and over what time frame. But I think it's an inescapable. It's ambient and inescapable. So it's interesting to see that. So David. Dev Gen AI, as sort of from a Morgan Stanley point of view, could you talk a little bit about how you see that utility for the firm and others like it that might emerge playing a part in the kind of broader transformation that you think Morgan Stanley is on?
Yeah, Dev Gen AI is our attempt to solve a problem that created a lot of risk for the organization, a lot of legacy code, right? We found that a lot of our underlying code base was built in the time of COBOL, right? And when you're going through COBOL, the practical reality is as much as we wanted to rip through and solve that pre-Gen AI, there just literally lacked enough COBOL engineers that you could even hire to go and do that, right? And this was something that we had a lot of conviction we had to solve, because oftentimes we talk about the efficiency angle of AI, but we found this was a risk mitigant angle of AI. And as a result of building this tool, which is a collaboration across the entire technology organization, we've deployed this out and we've now modernized over 16 million lines of code, not only including COBOL, but also to include things like Perl that was built in the 80s as well, right? That's an example where we saw, even though there's different buy options and we want to stay flexible, we also realized there's certain areas where we want to deeply specialize, particularly because even though COBOL exists as a code base, the way Morgan Stanley had been writing COBOL and the way we had configured it for our use was a little bit different. And that became an example of solving not only a particular use case, but going through and thinking of solving at a pattern level. And we're continuing to go through beyond Dev Gen AI, what are other ways we can solve at the pattern level, right? Other examples include, can we do things with financial data, right? Being able to query through large sets of databases and solve that problem. Can we do better on public research? So I think, Luke, I absolutely agree with what Sathish said. Flexibility, incredibly important. We're not at a point where we're really that comfortable thinking beyond 12 months at a time.
Right.
We also believe that we got to be ready to switch. But I think back to what I said earlier, if you're going to switch, you make sure the platform is ready to switch, but also you got to make sure you have really good evals.
Yeah.
As Sathish mentioned as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, Jodie. I'm going to ask you to think
Sure.
more than 12 months in advance, just for fun.
I'll be wrong, but go ahead.
Well, that's okay. Let's get on to people and talent. At Manulife, how are you thinking about what you will expect of your people into the long term? How can you enable them? But also, what are you going to expect them to deliver in a world where AI is much more deeply integrated?
Yeah, I mean, we're going through an exercise right now with our C-suite where we're setting ambitions for 2028 around what AI will do. And we're pushing really hard at this point to think beyond what we've been talking about the last 3 years, which is let's take the things we do today and make them better. And we're pushing them to say, what are the new things we will do? I mean, it's not a surprise, I'm sure, to anyone in this room. That's a hard exercise, right? We lack as people the imagination to change the context that we're in and think about the future. So we're really exercising that. How do we imagine a future and shift the context to that? And that is something that we're trying to instill at the very senior level and for everybody else. Like this imagination concept is quite new and quite different. So we're actually looking at how do we build AI tools to help in that imagination process? We think that's something that it's a little bit meta, but that's something that we're building into our kind of general purpose AI tool. The other thing that I believe, and we've been hard at work on this, is the level of penetration across our user base of 40,000 people on the general purpose AI tools is a great proxy for the degree to which we're changing the culture. And so we have a series of programs, 4 connected programs, to get people to use the general purpose AI tools. Right now we have 75% of our people who use our AI tools at least once a month. And we want to get that even higher. And I'm talking about, kind of as David said, the people that are furthest from AI. And I would say that our investment research analysts are the furthest from AI. So we're trying to get them, they're quite engaged now, but getting them engaged. Like to me, we can argue, I don't even care what the use case is and whether or not it's a new use case. But that level of penetration, to me, is an indicator whether you are shifting the culture. And I used the term with our CEO this week. He didn't like it, but it's hopefully like a gateway drug. It's have a little taste of what you want to do so that you can demand more. So I think that's critical.
Yeah. Sathish, you said something to me a moment ago, asking what AI and what people. I.e., where does AI land in your organization specifically and with which specific people? I wonder if I could turn the same kind of question to you. How do you see people at Ally changing, adapting, being enhanced into the future?
Yeah, the good news is they already are. Like we have taken it upon ourselves to say we need to create AI fluency within the organization. And that is from our folks that are talking to our customers to the CEO, right? So we rolled out Ally AI to the entire employee base. And what we also do is what we call AI days. Every 6 weeks or so, we have 4 hours set aside for people to come and learn about AI, what's happening externally, what's happening internally, and the tools that we are developing. So it's exciting to see what they're doing with it. But more importantly, your operating model has to change. In a world of agents, will you still be associated to a particular role, particular team, or a particular domain? So our leadership team recently logged ourselves for 2 days and said, in an AI-first world, if we have to operate in an AI-first world with agents, would we rehire and re-underwrite this role? And would you rehire this person for that particular role? We went through the entire technology organization. You might ask, are you crazy? How can you do the entire technology organization? And my answer to my leadership team, and they appreciated that, was, what is more important than that? How do you prepare your talent for an AI-first future? And what came out of that was positioning people to go into that future, thinking about what our operating model would be, thinking about a world where we don't have to think about roles and responsibilities, but tasks that we have to do, and what AI will be used to do that. So that is the level of thinking across the organization driving AI fluency, but as technology, we are leading the way in thinking how we will operate in an AI-first world.
I hope you're allowed to leave the room for breaks. Samir, I'll let you close us out, because you're such an interesting perspective looking across such a range of organizations in finance. What do you think the financial services firm of the future will really look like? What is at its core?
Yeah, that's a very broad question. I have 55 seconds. So I think a few things are happening, right? So foundationally, we have talked a lot, not just in this conversation, but in the earlier panels, about change in technology and evolution of technology, right? So that has table stakes. But I think there are two types of evolution to watch. One is in terms of customer experience and client experience, right? Huge push for personalization, a lot of customization of product, of offers, of service, right? And what's considered cutting edge today will be considered commodity tomorrow, right? Second is this large-scale transformation in the roles, as Sathish mentioned. I think the difference contrast between a business person being supported by a data analyst today who's writing SQL queries, that's probably going to go away. There's much more of self-service, right? Even within the organization. That's going to change, right? A lot of repeat tasks, search and retrieval tasks, data collation activity across the organizations, across the banks is going to change. It'll probably lead to a lot more lean and domain-centric organizations, which are focused on customer experience, which are focused on servicing and focused on risk, and a lot of those other types of functions which are kind of today in support of these in terms of moving around data or manipulating data or organizing or improving data are probably going to change quite significantly, and happening just in the next few years, not in the next few decades.
Yeah. Well, great to finish there. I'm sure we could have gone on, particularly on using AI to ideate AI futures for financial services. So, please give a big thanks to the panel.